Okay, Owen, do we got numbers? We do. Okay. You ready? I'm ready. Okay. Hi, Craig here. Today I want to talk about the Cummins Select Injector. So this is an electronically controlled injector. So I've got my flip chart here and I'm going to bring the camera really close so we can take a good look at what's going on in this injector as it goes through the process here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some of the main parts of the injector to start with. So right here, the injector control valve. This is very, very important. Right now it's closed and we're going to look at the cam position. I've colored the cam with the same color pen I'm using right now to show that it's on the outer base circle right now, and the timing plunger and metering piston is all the way down. Everything's compressed in there. The valve is closed. When the solenoid activates, it opens the valve and its spring closes the valve. We got a little metering control valve here, or ball, sorry, with a little spring that's not shown, little bias spring not shown. We got a couple spillways. We got our metering spill port here. We got our timing spill port here. And then we got our fuel supply. So this is the fuel that is supplied at 150 PSI, which is the operating pressure for this system. And we can go through the whole process of how this works. So there's our nozzle assembly, and down here, this is where the fuel is going to be metered to when we get there. So we'll start this process with all the components compressed, the needle valve pushed down, and we've just finished the last cycle, and we're going to move on to, just lift this up, into the metering cycle. Let's see, get this off. So the metering cycle, we'll notice where our plunger is. We're coming on inner base circle. So that means that this is coming down and this plunger is being lifted up by the timing spring plunger. At this point, the solenoid is keeping the valve closed and fuel is coming in at 150 psi, lifting the ball off its seat. Just the fuel pressure is overcoming the ball and the bias spring and filling the metering chamber. Now this fuel will continue to be metered until the solenoid excites this valve right here. And I think our next picture shows that. Okay, so the computer's decided that is enough fuel to be metered down in here into the metering chamber, so it opens the control valve by signaling the solenoid, and fuel now stops flowing down here. The metering ball closes, as I mentioned, the bias spring. That's going to cause that metering ball to close, and fuel starts coming into the timing chamber. Now we can see that that we've just about come to the end of inner base circle. The piston is still coming up and fuel continues to move into the timing chamber. What's down here in the metering chamber stays in there. And the pressure from the fuel, the 150 pounds of pressure on the fuel and the bias spring, is now pushing down, seating the ball, maintaining the metering fuel, and filling the timing chamber. So when the computer, let's just bring that back. When the computer decides, actually no, this comes all the way up, fuel is filling it. And then it's going to come around and start going on, it's still coming up, and this is full. Eventually this is going to come up and start pushing down. And when that does, the fuel in the timing chamber is going to start leaving back the same way it came in. And this is the computer controlling how much fuel is in the timing. Now we've already put the fuel in the metering chamber. The ball is closed, the spring is holding it down, it can't get out. There's pressure on this piston pushing down on the metering piston as well. So the fuel in there is locked in the cup. Now as the timing chamber gets empty, or as fuel leaves it and back through the fuel supply port, that will continue until the computer decides, or the ECM decides, that's exactly the amount of fuel we want for timing and to be able to control the timing. And then it'll release this valve and the spring will close it. And we can see it close now. And fuel, now we see we're at the high point here of the camshaft, and it's going to start pushing down. And this is closed, so the fuel pressure can't leave here anymore. So now it pushes down, and once we reach 5,000 PSI, the differential pressure overcomes the needle valve, it lifts, and it starts to spray fuel. This fuel in the metering chamber will continue to spray until the timing chamber comes down and lines up with the timing spill port. When it does that, pressure will be lost, This will continue downward. All the fuel will leave through here. Eventually the metering port will align and the excess fuel will leave out here, out through the supply port, and everything will be down with all the force down on the cup once again. And that brings us back to the beginning where we started with the cam on the high lobe, pushing all the components of the injector down, holding it in that position. Hope that is clear how the Cummins Select injector works, and it's given you some understanding of how this works. So hopefully I can be helpful.